Are you going to support Trump?
What's that?
Are you supporting Trump?
Figure that out. Thanks.
You know, I think my favorite film genre today is Congress member running away. And as they run away from reporters who are asking them hard questions, it always ends up being hilarious. In this case, it's Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania's 1st District, who portrayed himself as quite a moderate, but couldn't seem to answer a few months ago about whether he was going to vote for Donald Trump or not in the primary. You know, he is not a member of the Freedom Caucus. He's a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is supposed to be the centrist people. But the thing about that moment there is that, you know, he was fine with Donald Trump endorsing him in 2020 as this robocall that went out for him. Check it out.
Hello, Pennsylvania. This is Donald Trump, hopefully your all-time favorite president. And I'm calling for a very specific reason. Number one, get out and vote. And you're going to vote for me, but hopefully you're also going to vote for a tremendous congressman who's respected by everybody, Brian Fitzpatrick. And we have to go out and get out and vote. And you can do it right now. Re-elect Brian Fitzpatrick to Congress. Brian is a respected person. He's had an incredible career. Everybody in Washington sits up when Brian walks in, and he's represented you so well. So Pennsylvania, get out there and vote for Brian Fitzpatrick. Outstanding guy. You'll be very proud of this vote. Thank you very much.
This call is paid for by Bucks County Republican Committee.
Yeah. Look, I always say it. Sometimes words don't match actions. And Brian Fitzpatrick is living proof of that. He has voted consistently with the most radical members of his caucus, voted twice for Jim Jordan to be Speaker of the House. He's one of the most extreme anti-choice members of the Congress since the day he came into office. One of his first acts was to try and strip women's reproductive health care from the original Affordable Health Care Act. He's facing the same opponent he faced last cycle. And you guys know how I love second-time candidates. She's coming on strong. She's not afraid of a fight because she's a graduate of West Point like me and a helicopter pilot, an Apache helicopter pilot. So she's seen some tough times. I've known Ashley Ehasz for a few years, so I've been eager to get her in the hot seat and talk to her. Now she's got her primary behind her. She is the Democratic nominee for Pennsylvania's 1st District again, and I want to talk to her. So I'm your host, Fred Wellman, host of On Democracy with FP Wellman, right here on the MeidasTouch Network every Friday night. And this is In the Hot Seat with Ashley Ehasz. Ashley, welcome to the MeidasTouch Network. It's so good to connect with you. And I think I mentioned in my intro that we're actually friends. And I've known you for a while. So it's and for those who watch the show, I always tell guests that that our vibe is friends talking. And in this case, it is friends talking. So it's so good to have you here.
Yes.
You know, I always say I love second-time candidates. You learn a lot of lessons that first race, but it also takes a lot of grit to say, hey, I'm going back in the fight. Now, look, we know you got grit, West Point grad, you flew Apaches. We know you have that, but tell me, why did you decide to dive back in for a second bite of the apple?
Well, Fred, first, thank you for having me on. And of course, one West Pointer to another, thank you for acknowledging the grit that we have. We sure do.
Yeah.
Look, when we look at Pennsylvania's first and saving our democracy, the road to saving our democracy goes right through this district. And I'll start by just sharing a little bit of my background and then going into the details on the race. But a lot of what fortified me to run again and wanting to run again was the way I grew up and my background. I grew up to a single mom for most of my childhood, and I watched my mom struggle to decide between putting food on the table, paying rent, paying our heating bill, you name it. And we know a lot of families are still struggling with that. And when I was 17, and honestly, we may have a very similar story in this, I knew I needed a pathway to stability and opportunity. And for me, that was the Army. And I was really lucky to get into West Point. And it was actually a next door neighbor of mine who was a high school teacher who saw some potential in me and helped me with my application. And so if it weren't for him, every door that has been opened for me would not have been. And so I'm really deeply grateful. And that sense of community support is really important to me. And I think leaders in Congress need to know what it's like to work with other people to get things done. And here in Pennsylvania's first, this district, this community is desperate for a pro-choice, pro-democracy leader. And that is not what we have here in the district currently with Brian Fitzpatrick. And so my background is someone who grew up struggling, who served our country and our Constitution in the Army and proudly did so. I think I am a fantastic candidate to go against someone who is a false moderate who pretends to be one thing but really isn't. And as I mentioned, this district, which is just northeast of Philadelphia, so it's Bucks County and a little bit of Montgomery County, desperately wants pro-choice, pro-democracy leaders. And I think, again, the road to saving our democracy goes right through Pennsylvania's first.
Well, I follow events in Bucks County. I've got friends that live there, and they're always telling me. And you're right. It feels like I found that Bucks County, especially, is kind of sort of a bellwether in a lot of ways. You had the whole Moms for Liberty and the cultural fights, the school boards, and everything else. And now we're seeing that they're pushing back. That those folks got pushed off the school board. The county, the folks who live there are kind of tired of the culture war bullshit, and they're pushing back. Is that what you're seeing at the congressional level too?
Absolutely. And we are seeing it first and foremost at the doors when we're
Wow.
talking with voters and people who are really engaged right now. You're exactly right. So here, for those listening, in November of 2023, for our local elections, we had a phenomenal blue wave come through the
Yeah.
district. And that was for a number of reasons. We held our county commissioner board as Democrat for 2 cycles in a row for the first time in a very long time. But
Yeah.
also we had a real rise in extremism here in this district in our school boards, particularly Central Bucks and then Penn Ridge. And voters stood up and fought back against these really right-wing extremist forces that were trying to push us backwards. And in particular, the way it relates to my race is not only are these voters ready to get rid of really right-wing extremists in office, but Brian Fitzpatrick, the current representative, he endorsed the Moms for Liberty candidates that were running.
Oh.
He voted for the parents' rights bill. He voted to ban trans girls from participating in sports in their schools. I mean, this is someone who really kowtows to the far right extremists at every turn. He'll do whatever it takes to hold on, to keep his claws on power, even if
Yeah.
it means completely selling out this community, whether it's women and making sure he blocked the Women's Health Protection Act, which, as you know, would have protected reproductive rights at the federal level, or of course, yeah, endorsing Moms for Liberty candidates who really just wanted to turn our schools into cultural battlegrounds for kids.
Yeah, and he plays that reasonable Republican really well, right, on TV. I mean, yeah, what he's the Problem Solvers Caucus and all those things. He lightly chastises the Freedom Caucus, calling for the chaos. But you're right. I mean, what we've found over the years is it's not what you say, it's how you vote. And you're seeing, yeah, you said Brian Fitzpatrick votes a certain way, doesn't he?
Absolutely. And to be honest, I tell people all the time, like, look, Brian Fitzpatrick can say he is a moderate all he wants. I can say I am as tall as Cindy Crawford as much as I want. It doesn't mean I actually am. And he is not a moderate. And to be completely honest with you, I reject the notion that there is a moderate Republican in Congress right now. I think that
There
is
you
a
go.
completely false notion. And to kind of get specific on Fitzpatrick, he voted for Jim Jordan twice as Speaker, which is completely insane to me. So we know if there is a GOP majority after 2024, he's voting for Jim Jordan as Speaker. And that's someone who wants to pass a national abortion ban, who believes the election was stolen. That's not moderate to me. Someone who thinks Moms for Liberty candidates are the best to have on our school boards. That's not moderate to me. Let's see what else. He also voted to impeach Mayorkas twice with no evidence, while also not impeaching Trump twice when there was overwhelming evidence. So that is not a moderate to me. And I think he is someone who is
Yeah.
desperately trying to paint an image of himself when his votes show otherwise. He is just a person who lacks complete courage. And Pennsylvania's first just deserves so much better than that.
Yeah, and one of those big issues we face on every ballot, and I say it every time, is you're facing a woman's right to choose, reproductive rights on every single ballot right now. I'm sure. I mean, are you hearing that at the doors yourself? I mean, is that what you're hearing from your constituency? That there really is a frustration that so many of these anti-choice and truly anti-woman type voices like Fitzpatrick are still in power. What are you seeing with your perspective there in the district?
That is for sure at the doors or on the phones. That is what we're hearing overwhelmingly. People are scared, and the fact that since the Dobbs decision, it has only
Hmm.
gotten worse. That people have a right to be scared because, big
Yeah.
picture, if the Republican Party gets the majority in Congress and White House, they will pass a national abortion ban, and there is nothing at the state level that can protect people from that. So that is a very real threat to all of us. But also, we've seen in the Dobbs decision, they teed up infrastructure to undo a lot of other rights. And so these attacks we've seen on IVF, now birth control, those are very real threats because that decision wrote the playbook to go after all of that. And people here, there are very real problems, whether they want to put food on their table or pay their rent, the same problems that my mom faced. That's what people are dealing with right now. So when we have a GOP majority that is hell bent on just completely destroying women's bodily autonomy for what? So they can say they did when they're not actually solving the real problems that families are having. First of all, it's ridiculous. Second of all, it is instilling fear in people. And the core message I come back to whenever I'm talking with people is at the end of the day, I want competence over chaos. And people see that the GOP majority is bringing nothing but chaos in people's lives. And we just want to bring competence back and actually get things done for folks.
You served your country. You sowed the same oath I did on the
I
plane at
was
West Point
17.
when you were 17, probably like I was. You then went on to swear when you became a commission. Yeah, I was 17. Yeah, you became a commissioned officer. You served your country. You got a couple of promotions. You sworn that oath a few times. It does feel like I think you and I share the same view as veterans of where we are as a country with democracy. You see the Project 2025. You see the horrifying ideas of Agenda 47, and it's more apparent that there won't be a single Republican to stand in the way. How do you see this attack on our democracy, and how does that play into your campaign?
It of the things that keep me up at night, the loss of our democracy and the how close we are to losing it is one of them. And I tell people, obviously, I'm running for the U.S. House, and I see our first test of our democracy is the day we go to certify the election, and it is the House that
Yeah.
does that. And if we have a GOP majority, including Brian Fitzpatrick, who knows what they will do? And that will be the first
Yeah.
test we face. And yeah, if we have a GOP majority, we will very likely fail that test. And specifically with choice, um you likely feel the same way. I fought overseas to defend our country and our rights, and to see them taken away from us, and specifically me as a woman here at home, is such a slap in the face for that sacrifice. And my motivation to run for office, both last cycle and of course this cycle, was in particular January 6th, seeing other veterans on the Hill that day, seeing Americans as the enemy for the first time in my career. I had never seen anything like that, nor did I ever expect to. And it was really emotional. And that was the moment I decided I need to run for office and make sure we have good veteran leadership in the House, and certainly get Brian Fitzpatrick out of the seat. He does not deserve to have this seat. So I am deeply fearful. And I hate to be, or I always hate looking at those politicians who induce fear where there doesn't need to be. I don't like voters
Yeah.
who vote out of fear. I think that's a real
Yeah.
injustice to them. They need information. But at the end of the day, I think this is the most important election of our lifetimes, and there is a lot to be afraid of. But I have so much hope when voters are informed of what the stakes are. When the voters know Brian Fitzpatrick's hellish votes, they will choose democracy every time, and I'm really optimistic about that.
I believe I'm right there with you. So there's a most important question I always wrap all these every interview wrapped up with. The most important question is where can the Midas Mighty, our viewers and our listeners, find you? Where can they chip in? Because you've learned a lot of lessons this last cycle. You're doing even better this time. I've looked at the numbers; it's fantastic.
Thank you.
But you're right. You're not going to take on an entrenched incumbent if you don't have backing, and people from all over the country can help. So where can they find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they donate?
Thank you, Fred. That's a very generous question. We are everywhere. Specifically, if you want to donate, volunteer, do anything to support the campaign, please go to the website. It's www.ehaz. It's tricky. It's EHASZ for Congress.com. You'll find everything there.
I love it. Well, Ashley, it's so great to catch up with you again. Always good to actually connect with an actual friend. And I'm just so proud of you. I'm proud of you as a fellow West Pointer and an older one. If those who know our culture at West Point, I'm an old grad, and Ashley
Ooh.
pretends to be an old grad
I'm getting
because she's
there, though,
not.
Fred. I appreciate
I
it.
don't know,
A few more
sister.
years.
I'm not buying it. Nonetheless, congratulations. I'm proud of you. Keep up the good work. We appreciate what you're doing.
Hey, thanks, Fred.
Another great conversation. And I always say I'm trying to make these shows feel like you're watching me talk to a friend. Well, this time you did. So Ashley's a terrific candidate, terrific leader. She was a great officer in the Army. I'm proud to see her running again. We'll be seeing more of these. We'll be seeing more from her, I promise. And we'll be presenting more of these fantastic interviews with candidates from across the country. I hope you're enjoying them. They're doing great. The candidates appreciate you. So many of them have reached out to me after our conversations to tell me that you, the Midas Mighty, and others have reached out to them, sent them support, sent them donations. And if you could do that, it matters a lot. A lot of these races really could use your help. With that, You can always find me every Friday night at 11 p.m. Eastern, right here in the MeidasTouch Network with On Democracy, FP Wellman. Always great shows every week. We post it right then, and you can watch it all weekend, whenever you want to. In the meantime, I am Fred Wellman, host of On Democracy. We'll see you next week.